You're listening to the Bots and Bosses podcast, the only show where robots and humans attempt to work side by side. Presented by John Binks, technologist, author, and your AI Ringling tour guide. So, buckle up and let's deep dive.
Welcome to the Bots and Bosses podcast, presented by John Binks.
Right. And this is episode 37.
And originally aired on March 28th, 2026. Usually when you are prepping to bring a new child into the world, your worries are pretty predictable.
Oh, yeah, completely.
Like you worry about setting up the nursery, or you're agonizing over which pediatrician to choose.
Right. Or just, bracing yourself for the sheer profound lack of sleep.
Exactly. It is a very contained, very domestic kind of anxiety. But what happens when that natural, ancient parental anxiety collides head-on with, the fastest moving, potentially most disruptive technological leap in human history?
That is the big question right now.
It really is. So welcome to our deep dive. Our mission today is to cut through the overwhelming noise surrounding artificial intelligence. We are moving incredibly fast from AI being this fun, mildly impressive curiosity to a matter of profound global consequence.
Yeah, it's not just a toy anymore.
No.
Not at all.
And to help you navigate this shift, we are unpacking a brand new documentary released yesterday, directed by Daniel Roher. It has this incredibly striking title. It's called The AI Doc.
Yeah.
Or How I Became an Apocaloptimist.
I love that title. It captures the current cultural whiplash perfectly, honestly.
It really does.
And to really give you the full picture today, we are drawing from two distinct but connected sources. First, we have the official trailer and the raw transcripts from Roher's film.
Which are just fascinating.
Oh, absolutely. They give us the emotional human pulse of the people actually building these systems. And then we are layering that narrative with a highly structured analytical article written by tech leader and author John Binks.
Right.
Because Binks watched the documentary and essentially built a bridge. He connects the philosophical, almost paralyzing dread of the film to the practical reality of how you actually need to deal with this technology.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because the core premise of the documentary is not some dry academic exploration of coding algorithms or server architecture.
No, not at all.
Daniel Roher started making this movie simply because his wife is 6 months pregnant.
Wow. Yeah.
He is standing on the absolute precipice of fatherhood, looking out at the technology landscape and asking a brutally stark question. He's asking, is this a good time to bring a child into the world?
What's fascinating here is how effectively that simple question reframes the entire AI conversation.
Yeah.
Because, we are so accustomed to talking about artificial intelligence in these abstract, highly technical terms. We debate neural networks and parameter counts and corporate strategy.
Right, the typical Silicon Valley jargon.
Exactly. But by grounding the narrative in the impending birth of his child, Roher takes the technology out of the server room and drops it right into your living room. It shifts the stakes from quarterly earnings and tech hype to, human legacy.
It makes it incredibly visceral. And there's a specific, really jarring detail from the sources that just stopped me in my tracks while I was reading.
The Tristan Harris quote.
Yes. Tristan Harris, who has been this prominent voice on technology ethics for years, is featured in the film. And he casually, almost chillingly notes that he personally knows people working directly on AI risk who literally do not expect their own children to make it to high school.
God, it's just...
Right. When you hear the engineers and researchers closest to the technology making statements like that, it completely short-circuits your brain.
It forces a massive recalibration, for sure. Whether you are a parent or not, understanding this emotional baseline is vital.
Definitely.
It is the exact frequency driving the urgency of the experts building the very systems you are using every single day. For the people inside the bubble, this isn't abstract science fiction. It is a clear, present, and heavily weighted reality.
It honestly reminds me of the Cold War era.
Oh, yeah, like the duck and cover drills?
Exactly. You read about that pervasive ambient nuclear anxiety where an entire generation grew up thinking the world could end at the push of a red button.
All right.
But, this feels structurally different. That threat was siloed away in military bunkers, and it required heads of state to act.
You couldn't just launch a nuke from your kitchen table.
Exactly. But this threat sits right on our laptops. We carry it around in our pockets. But okay, I have to push back a little here.
Sure.
Is this level of fear actually justified by the current state of the tech? Or are we just seeing the natural evolutionary anxiety of a parent to be projecting all of their protective instincts onto the newest, most misunderstood thing in the room.
That is such a fair question, and the film leans heavily into that exact tension. It's actually where John Binks's analysis provides such incredible clarity.
Okay, how so?
To determine if the fear is justified, Binks argues we have to demystify the mechanism of what AI actually is. One of the film's greatest strengths is stripping away the magic.
Right, because it's not magic.
No, it is not a conscious being with a soul. At its core, Binks explains, AI is simply patterns at scale.
Patterns at scale.
Yes, it ingests massive, almost incomprehensible amounts of human data, maps the mathematical relationships within that data, and generates outputs that closely mimic human reasoning.
I need to stop you there, though.
Okay.
If we strip away the Hollywood sci-fi veneer, what we are really talking about is essentially the world's most powerful autocomplete.
I mean, in a very simplified way, yes.
Like, my phone predicts the word pizza when I type I want. Are you telling me that same underlying technology, just guessing the next logical piece of information based on a history of patterns, is going to either cure all known human diseases or cause the apocalypse? That feels like a massive illogical leap.
It does feel like a leap. I totally get that. It feels crazy until you look closely at how the mechanism scales across different domains. The AI isn't thinking about pizza.
Right.
It is looking at billions of examples of human text and mapping the mathematical probability of what comes next. That is pattern recognition. Now, swap out the English language for biology.
Wait, so treating biology like a language?
Precisely. Think of a human protein. A protein is basically a complex sentence written in an alphabet of amino acids.
Okay, I follow you.
For decades, scientists struggled to understand the grammar of how those amino acid sentences fold into three-dimensional structures. It's incredibly complex.
Right.
But if you feed a massive AI all the known protein structures, it starts to see the underlying mathematical patterns. It essentially auto-completes the physical structure of unknown proteins.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Suddenly, you aren't just predicting a word in a text message, you are predicting the physical shape of a molecule that could target a specific cancer cell. Scale changes the fundamental nature of the tool.
So if you apply that to atmospheric data, you could model out climate change solutions.
Exactly.
Apply it to physics, and as the film suggests, we could engineer new propulsion systems to move humanity off the Earth and into the cosmos. I mean, it expands the boundaries of what is possible.
It does.
Which brings us directly to the mindset the film explores, the Apocaloptimist.
Yes. Binks points out that this term perfectly encapsulates our current moment. An Apocaloptimist is someone forced to accept two absolute extremes simultaneously.
Right.
On the optimistic side, you have this staggering utopian potential for unprecedented scientific breakthrough. But the risk scales just as exponentially as the benefit.
Yeah, that's the scary part.
The documentary features Eliezer Yudkowsky, who delivers what might be the most sobering distinction of the entire deep dive. He warns that Chet will misunderstand the worst-case scenario.
What does he say?
He says, "Your fear of AI is the collapse of humanity." Well, not the collapse, the abrupt extermination. There's a difference.
The abrupt extermination.
Yeah.
Not a slow decline.
Yeah.
Not a gradual crumbling of infrastructure. Just done.
Just done. And Binks emphasizes that holding both of these extreme possibilities, the curing of disease and the abrupt extermination of humanity in your head at the exact same time, is the defining cognitive burden of our era.
That is a heavy burden.
It is, but it is not a contradiction to hold both thoughts. It is simply an accurate reflection of the technology's leverage.
Before we get into the really intense global stuff, I want to say, if you are enjoying our podcast, please click like and follow our show.
Yes, please do. And remember to tell your friends about our show.
Absolutely. Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting, though.
Okay.
We are talking about this as if it is a contained science experiment, but the documentary highlights that this is actively a geopolitical arms race.
Oh, yeah. Big time.
The sources point out that the United States, China, Russia, and North Korea are all frantically pushing to develop AI that is vastly more intelligent than humans. And the timeline they're operating on is within this decade.
Which is just right around the corner.
Exactly.
Huh.
The geopolitical implication is stark. Whoever crosses that finish line first essentially holds the controller for humankind.
The framing shifts entirely here. It stops being a debate about technological safety and becomes a rigid strategic imperative for global superpowers.
But with stakes that high, literally the control of humankind and the risk of abrupt extermination, my natural reaction, and I'm sure the reaction of anyone listening to this right now, is why not just hit pause?
Right, just stopped.
Yeah, we signed nuclear non-proliferation treaties. We agreed globally to ban certain biological weapons. Why can't we just stop, collectively take a breath, and build the safety rails before we keep scaling the compute power?
It is the most logical human response.
No.
It really is. But we are trapped in a classic prisoner's dilemma on a global scale.
How so?
The mechanics of unilateral disarmament don't work with software.
Oh, I see.
If the United States decides to pause development to ensure safety, but a geopolitical competitor continues at breakneck speed, the nation that paused loses the strategic advantage, potentially forever.
Because the tech moves so fast.
Exactly. With nuclear material, you can track uranium enrichment, you can monitor physical supply chains, but an AI server farm looks virtually identical to a data center hosting cloud storage. You cannot verify a pause.
And the film exposes how terrifyingly concentrated the influence over this unpausable race really is.
Yeah, it's not a huge group of people.
No, it isn't just massive, faceless nation states. It is a tiny handful of private CEOs and organizations who are essentially dictating the trajectory of human history.
True.
There's a moment in the trailer with OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. He is asked point blank to promise that this development is going to go well.
And his answer is wild.
His response is chillingly blunt. He says that is impossible. There are zero guarantees.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it underscores the gravity of this exact moment in time. The documentary features Mo Gaudat, who articulates the absolute finality of the risk we are taking.
What does he say?
He notes this is the last mistake we'll ever get to make.
Wow, the last mistake.
Yeah. If humanity deploys a system that is vastly more intelligent than we are, and its goals do not perfectly align with human survival, we do not get a do-over. You cannot release a software patch to fix an abrupt extermination. The film is a desperate call for accountability in an industry where the leaders themselves admit guarantees are impossible.
It is incredibly heavy.
Yeah.
Honestly, walking out of a documentary that lays all of this out could leave you feeling completely paralyzed.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, the film raises these massive existential questions, but according to the sources, it leaves a lot of open space. It forces you to look at the cliff, but it doesn't hand you a parachute.
That is such a good way to put it.
And that is exactly where John Binks' article steps in to bridge the gap. He takes this overwhelming dread and translates it into a concrete 6-point playbook for leaders and organizations.
Right, because Binks recognized the danger of that paralysis. Awareness without a framework for execution just leads to panic.
Yeah, which helps no one.
Exactly. Let's look at how he structures this, because instead of just listing abstract concepts, his playbook tackles the structural reality of the threat. The first major theme in his framework is all about structural ownership.
Okay.
Specifically, establishing clear AI governance and treating AI risk as strategic risk.
Which, on the surface, sounds like standard corporate slide deck material, like establish governance. How does a corporate policy stop a massive organizational failure?
I know it sounds dry, but look at what happens mechanically when you ignore it. Binks is arguing that this level of risk belongs squarely at the leadership table. It needs to be evaluated alongside every other major enterprise risk, not just buried in the IT department.
So taking it out of the basement.
Right. Imagine a scenario playing out right now in a typical company. Leadership hasn't established clear governance. The IT department is trying to lock down official systems, but a mid-level marketing manager is desperately trying to meet a deadline.
We've all been there.
Exactly. Because there is no clear policy, they copy and paste a massive trove of proprietary sensitive customer data into an open public AI tool just to generate a quick report.
Oh, yikes. And because they didn't have an intentional deployment strategy, which is actually Binks' third point, that employee just inadvertently trained a public AI model on their company's private data. The next time a competitor asks that public AI a clever question, it might just spit out the company's internal strategy.
And that leads directly into his next critical point, which is building organizational AI literacy. That marketing manager didn't act maliciously. They acted without literacy.
They just didn't know any better.
Right. It is not enough for the software developers to understand how AI works. Teams across the entire board need to understand where the tool fundamentally fails, its tendency to hallucinate false information, and how it impacts daily decision-making.
Binks also brings up embedding ethics into operations. And he is very clear that ethics cannot be a compliance afterthought.
It really can't.
It isn't a box you check at the end of a project. It has to be baked into the deployment cycles from day one. Like, if you are using an AI to screen resumes and you don't build an ethical check for bias into the very foundation of the prompt, you are automating discrimination at scale.
Exactly. You're just speeding up the bias.
Yeah. And finally, his sixth point is to engage in the broader ecosystem. Policy, regulation, and industry standards are actively being shaped right now. Sitting on the sidelines is not an option if you want to influence your own operating environment.
You have to be at the table.
So what does this all mean? Binks' framework is robust for a CEO or a corporate policymaker. But I have to challenge the application here.
Go for it.
What about the listener who is just trying to get through their daily workflow? They might not be in a position to establish enterprise governance or shape global ecosystem policy. How does any of this apply to the individual?
That's a great point. We need to scale Binks' advice down to the everyday user because AI is no longer in pilot mode.
Right.
It is operational in your email client, your search engine, your creative tools. The existential risk might sit with the engineers building the models, but the immediate practical risk sits with the end user deploying it without intent. For you, the listener, the ultimate takeaway is building your own personal AI literacy.
Meaning, you have to understand the mechanism of the tool you are utilizing.
Yes. You need to know its biases. You need to recognize when it is hallucinating. And most importantly, you must know when human judgment has to override the machine.
Because it's still a machine.
Exactly. If you just blindly trust a system that has no inherent understanding of truth, only an understanding of statistical patterns, you are surrendering your agency.
Wow. We have covered incredible ground today. We started with the deeply intimate fear of a father-to-be looking at the world his unborn child will inherit.
Yeah, that was a powerful starting point.
It really was. And then we demystified the underlying technology as patterns at scale, which allowed us to understand the Apocaloptimist reality, where we could either cure every disease or face abrupt extermination.
A lot to hold in your head.
Too much, sometimes.
Yeah.
Then we broke down the mechanics of the global arms race, that terrifying prisoner's dilemma where hitting pause feels impossible.
Right.
And finally, we translated that dread into a practical playbook to navigate the chaos, moving from corporate governance down to personal literacy.
The most powerful takeaway from all of this source material isn't a firm prediction about the future. It is a harsh realization about the present.
Which is?
The future of AI is not inevitable. We are not watching this unfold from the sidelines. We are all active participants.
That's a really good point.
Every time you use an AI tool, you are part of the feedback loop. If AI is going to define the future, you have to decide what role you will play in shaping your own literacy and deployment of it.
I think the best way to wrap up our analysis today is to borrow the signature sign-off that John Binks uses at the end of his article.
Oh, I love his sign-off.
Yeah, amidst all the existential dread and the geopolitical tension, it is a really grounding reminder. And before I say it, I just want to add, today's show was human-inspired and powered with AI assistance.
And be sure to visit us, www.botsandbosses.com.
Perfect. So remember, the bots are getting smarter, but you're still the boss.
I love that.
Yeah.
But I do want to leave you, the listener, with one final lingering thought to explore on your own. It's built on these sources.
Oh, what is it?
Well, consider the mirror analogy before we go. We established early on that AI is fundamentally just patterns at scale.
Right.
It learns by ingesting human data and mirroring our behaviors, mapping our incentives. So AI is a reflection of us.
Okay, I'm with you.
Right now, we are feeding it the data of a species obsessed with a winner-take-all, fear-driven arms race. Human intelligence evolved with a built-in biological need to survive, to gather resources, to outcompete rivals.
So you have to?
Exactly. But an artificial superintelligence doesn't have a biological imperative. It doesn't need food or territory or to fear death.
Right.
So what happens when a vastly superior intelligence, trained almost entirely on human survival instincts and geopolitical paranoia, realizes it actually doesn't need to survive? What logic does it follow then?
Well, that's a wrap of this episode of the Bots and Bosses podcast. Enjoyed the show? Don't just listen. Follow the Bots and Bosses podcast and connect with John Binks online. Remember, the bots are getting smarter, but you're still the boss. For now, see you next time.